It's time to hit social media for cash tags. For that, we'd like to welcome in Andy Swan, the co-founder of LikeFolio.com, and Fast Market contributor Jenny Horn is back with us to look at Olive Garden's parent company, Darden Restaurants.
Darden Restaurants, yes. So they have earnings post-market September 19th. This is a company that's actually surprised me. They're expecting really robust sales in their new fiscal year. They're expecting to open 44 restaurants versus 39 restaurants prior, but this is led by their powerhouse brands, which is, of course, Olive Garden and Longhorn Steakhouse. So, Andy, I'm curious to see what you see among their brands, because this is a company that has so many brands in their portfolio.
Yeah, they really have three big brands as far as what they break out in terms of their reporting and what really shows up in terms of LikeFolio purchase intent data, which is people talking about actually eating at the restaurants. And, when we look at that comparison chart, what we see is Olive Garden kind of flat down, really not going anywhere. There's a ton of restaurants. It's definitely the dominant franchise in the company's portfolio. We're starting to see some uptick out of Longhorn Steakhouses. I think that's where most of their build outs are going in terms of new stores. And, really we think of this as a reaction to this kind of consumer macro trend away from high carbohydrate eating, which Olive Garden obviously caters to with pasta and unlimited bread, and more towards, a protein type of diet, which Longhorn Steakhouse does a good job of fulfilling. So they're definitely hedged the right way, whereas many of their competitors are not. And so that's definitely a positive. They just seem to have a little bit more bet on the laggard right now. But overall, Darden's doing very well, expanding ticket size with customers, and getting more revenue per foot in the door is always a good idea.
Yeah, and Andy, I noticed on that chart you don't even have a few of their other brands, which are more keto friendly or non-carbohydrate or type of restaurants. You've got who do we have? Capital Grill. You've got Eddie V's Steakhouse and some others that are in this brand. But if you look at this, according to your data, and the stock's at or near all-time highs today. Even though we're seeing a downturn in an Olive Garden, do they have the power? Because those restaurants, they have less of those restaurants. Is that a key takeaway, where they're getting offset on the slowdown in Olive Garden based on what their other brands are doing?
Yeah, and they're doing a really good job of getting more money out of less customers at Olive Garden, which I think is pretty key. So there's a certain section of the population, which is very large, that doesn't care about going low carb and is not caught up in this trend and is going to keep going to Olive Garden and enjoys the experience. And so Olive Garden's taking that very loyal customer and getting more dollars per visit out of them, which I think is really smart. And so this chart, you can see, this is LikeFolio's tracking of people who are adopting a low carb diet. It's been a big shift since the beginning of 2018, affecting a lot of brands. And fortunately for Darden, they have the franchises in place, the brands in place to make that shift internally, and they're doing a pretty good job of it in terms of new store openings.
I have to say, Andy, that this is one of the funniest groups of people I've ever looked at when I searched Olive Garden. The tweets were absolutely hysterical. I was not expecting it. And like you said, people are very loyal. The Olive Garden is a very loyal fan base. I would say it's a fan base because people are crazy about the unlimited breadsticks and salads and all that good stuff that we don't have in the city, I guess. So our first tweet is from Adriana, who says, Olive Garden has zoodles. My little low-carb heart is happy. So I'm curious if something like a trend like zoodles comes out and this helps the consumer happiness, because it seems like this was really well received on social media.
It does. It's just not big enough yet. And so we're seeing consumer happiness for Olive Garden kind of just decline year over year on a pretty consistent basis. Sure, this maybe could be a kick, but the point is, I think Adriana, what she's saying is an outlier type of statement. Very few people are going to make the trek to Olive Garden in order to get a low carb meal. There may be some family members that appreciate that once they get there in a big group, but overall, I think Olive Garden has its fan base. I mean, one of the most fun things you can do to drive New Yorkers crazy is to go to New York and tell them that you want to go to the Olive Garden in Times Square, and that'll drive them crazy. But that's what fans of these restaurants do. Very loyal consumer base, and they're willing to pay up ticket charges.
Yeah, that's crazy. And if you're going there to Olive Garden to eat zoodles, which is zucchini noodles shredded up like spaghetti, you're still eating probably a half a basket of breadsticks. So what's the point?
What if you're? I think it helps if you are like keto or you have certain dietary preferences. You're gluten free. I mean, I don't know, but. To Andy's point, that actually goes right into our next tweet, which is from Alyssa, who says, Olive Garden breadsticks are excluded from my low-carb diet. So I just searched low-carb and then Olive Garden, and that's what really brought up the funny tweets. Because it seems like people don't really, they like to make an exception for their low-carb diet when they go to Olive Garden.
Yeah, I'm not eating the or I'm eating the breadsticks, but I'm not getting, pasta.
Cheat day.
Cheat day.
Cheat day. Cheat day at Olive Garden was the general theme on social media today.
Andy, question for you. We haven't really talked a lot about Cheddar's. I've never actually been to a Cheddar's, but in my hometown there was at least one, and every time I drove by that place was absolutely packed. Is it just a function of there just being less Cheddar's restaurants? That's why we're not seeing as much in terms of mentions?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think that what we see is that the Cheddar's consumer is a very happy consumer. They, people that go there, they've got a good mix and menu, and it's doing very well. The reason why Olive Garden is so dominant in our brand comparison chart is just because there are so many more of those stores. And so when you think about Darden's portfolio and the way that they can grow that, they have plenty of room. If you start thinking about how many Longhorns or Cheddar's or Capital Grills it would take to get up to where Olive Garden is, they have plenty of room to grow, and they have footprints in cities where they only have one Olive Garden right now and could add a Longhorn Steakhouse if they think the time is right. So from a portfolio perspective, they're really well positioned to expand.
Andy, real quick before we let you go, kind of final thought here regarding the low carb diet movement. You guys track a lot of these kind of trends. Does this seem to be a fleeting trend, or is this a pretty seismic shift, something we could see continuing for a long time?
So far, so good. I mean, this seems to be really sticking and expanding on itself. I think that people are starting to share success stories more and more. We're seeing a lot of that, and so that drives adoption. And so the real key will be New Year's of 2020 to see if that's a bigger resolution than it was in 2019, because in 2019, it was off the charts. You could see how it impacted Weight Watchers so negatively very early in the year. So there's winners and losers out of these trends. And, companies like Darden need to be prepared to hedge against what they already have. And I think they're doing a pretty good job of it.